The rule carved in stars. In the galactic database of interspecies law, etched in every major language from binary to bioluminescent code, there was a single directive emphasized in crimson red. Rule number 1, do not harm human children, especially their young girls. No footnotes, no exceptions, no second chances. The rule wasn't born from diplomacy or kindness. It was written in the blood of 1,000 battles, forged after the last great galactic war, when the Terran Confederacy had risen against all odds and reminded the galaxy that its compassion had limits. After their final victory at the siege of Carthales, the humans had withdrawn, leaving behind a single warning: touch our children again, and we'll show you why we left Earth to begin with. The galaxy believed them. For centuries, that rule held. Until now. Commander Varkash of the Galactic Empire was a creature of pride and conquest. His scaled skin bore the silver marks of 8 planetary campaigns. He had razed cities, broken resistance cells, and spat on treaties. But the one thing he could not abide was the influence of humanity. They are soft, he often hissed in council. They poison our young with stories of love and mercy. They call it culture. I call it infestation. When the order came to occupy Arden 7, a small, unarmed colony on the edge of contested space, Varkash saw an opportunity. Not just to secure a strategic position, but to make a statement. Arden 7 was peaceful, built among red-leaf forests and silver streams. Children played in solar gardens while robotic tutors floated nearby. Among them was Maya Torres, a 12-year-old girl who had never seen war, never heard the scream of plasma fire. She loved drawing constellations. She kept a journal where she gave names to stars that already had names, because hers were prettier. She once told her mother she wanted to be an ambassador, so people wouldn't yell anymore. That morning, Maya was sitting in her favorite tree when the Empire's ships descended. She wasn't afraid at first. No one was. After all, the rule had protected them for generations. They were wrong. The first blast targeted comm towers. Then came the shock troops, black-armored, faceless, moving like insects through the streets. Homes were ripped open. Drones swarmed overhead. No evacuation warning, no announcements. Just the crackling roar of subsonic displacers and the cries of the innocent. Maya ran, barefoot, clutching her sketchpad. Her mother's voice echoed behind her, then was silenced by the deafening collapse of their home. Maya turned a corner and found herself face to face with one of them. It raised its weapon. Her final drawing fluttered to the ground. A star in a child's crayon hand, named Hope. The galaxy held its breath. Footage from the colony leaked. No one knew how. A dying service drone? Maybe. Or a rebel satellite. But spread like wildfire. Billions watched in silence as a girl's small body was covered by debris, her sketchpad beside her. The broadcast ended with one word: violation. The Galactic Senate convened in emergency session. Many species screamed in outrage. The Crithian emissaries demanded the Empire be held accountable. The Solani offered reparations to humanity. Even ancient neutral factions spoke out. The Empire, arrogant and composed, issued a single, dismissive response. Unfortunate collateral. The girl was within an occupied zone. The rule does not apply in war. They didn't understand. Or perhaps they had forgotten. The Terran Confederacy did not respond. No envoy was sent. No declaration of war. Earth simply went silent. Across human space, comms fell dark. Civilian traffic vanished. Merchant ships rerouted and vanished into classified channels. Military archives, long sealed, flickered online. On Mars, ancient war forges reignited. On Titan, deep bunkers opened and old AI generals awoke. And somewhere, deep beneath the lunar surface, a voice whispered. Protocol, wrath of innocence. Engaged. They had broken the rule, and humanity was coming. The awakening of humanity. The galaxy had seen humanity go silent before. But this silence was different. It wasn't the silence of diplomacy. It wasn't retreat or hesitation. It was the silence of something ancient stirring, something deliberate, cold, and full of purpose. The Empire believed it was in control. Commander Varkash's forces continued fortifying their grip on Arden 7, converting the ruined colony into a forward base. He paraded through the ashes with pride, convinced he had cowed a declining species into irrelevance. He had no idea he had lit the fuse on a vengeance measured not in anger, but in calculation. Across human space, something extraordinary was happening. On Earth, the World Assembly dissolved into a single emergency council. Nations erased borders overnight. Rivalries that had endured for generations vanished in an instant. The death of one girl, one child, had done what centuries of politics could not. In orbit above Luna, the old battle station Janus Break reactivated after 300 years. Automated defenses realigned. Dormant fleets powered on, weapons humming with fresh energy. At the heart of Mars, in the cavern city of Thessalis, a massive databank called the Protocol Vault unlocked its final tier. Inside was a failsafe humanity never wanted to use. The Wrath of Innocence. It was not a military campaign. It was not even war. It was a reckoning. Among those answering the call was Sergeant Elias Torres, Maya's father. He had retired 10 years ago, broken by too many battlefields and too many funerals. He'd laid down his rifle to raise his daughter under a quiet sky, far from Earth's scars. He had taught her how to fish, how to sketch, how to name the stars. Now, he sat alone in their burned-out home on Arden 7, clutching the scorched remains of her journal. Pages torn, crumpled, half-charred. Yet somehow, the drawing titled Hope had survived. He didn't cry. He stood, and he walked back into the fire. At the edges of the galaxy, human ships vanished from trade lanes. Cargo routes went cold. Listening stations picked up nothing but faint bursts of encrypted code, ancient Terran military ciphers last used during the Carthalis campaign. Alien allies grew nervous. Former enemies grew terrified. On the capital world of the Crithian Accord, Chancellor Brellick addressed his people. The humans have not spoken. That is the message. Pray you are not standing in their path when they decide to act. And still, the Empire dismissed the warnings. Commander Varkash believed they were witnessing nothing more than a coordinated bluff. He doubled his fleet presence in the outer territories and ordered the execution of remaining civilians on Arden 7 to prevent future insurgency. The message went out, and the galaxy turned its eyes to Earth. Then it came. A single Terran stealth cruiser, designation Soul's Mercy, breached Empire space. No weapons were fired. No planets attacked. It transmitted a single message on every frequency, in every galactic language. Protocol, Wrath of Innocence. Confirmed. You have one standard cycle to surrender Commander Varkash. After that, nothing you have will be enough. Terran Confederacy High Command. For the first time in recorded history, Imperial Command did not respond. Not out of defiance, but paralysis. Varkash raged in private. He accused his advisors of cowardice, his generals of fear-mongering. Let them come, he snarled. Let the apes try. He still didn't understand. This wasn't about pride. It wasn't about power. This was about a girl with a sketchpad and stars in her eyes. Humanity was not driven by conquest. They didn't need territory. They didn't seek tribute, but harm one of their children, and they would rise, not as conquerors, but as something far more dangerous. A united species with nothing to lose. Across every human colony, conscription lists overflowed. Volunteers, miners, artists, programmers, teachers lined up to serve. The phrase for Maya was etched on rifles, painted on armor, whispered in unity during silent deployments. Her name became the beating heart of the coming storm. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Empire had broken the rule, and now, the ones who wrote it were coming to enforce it. Retribution unleashed. The first strike came at 0300 Galactic Standard Time. The Empire's outermost defense ring, Station Halvern Prime, blinked off the network without a sound. One moment, it was relaying routine patrol data. The next, it was gone. No distress call, no explosion, no debris, just silence. Empire Command scrambled for answers. Admiral Jurek demanded scans, but sensors reported nothing. Ships dispatched to investigate found only melted hull fragments and a strange, lingering echo, like a scream stretched across dimensions. The Empire had faced rebellion, insurgents, pirates, even civil war, but they had never faced humanity in vengeance mode. In the shadows of deep space, human fleets moved with terrifying precision. They didn't announce their targets. They didn't engage in planetary sieges or waste time with politics. They went for the spine, targeting communications arrays, supply depots, warp gates, and shipyards. The Empire's strength was its size. Humanity turned that strength into a liability. Each imperial system depended on vast supply chains and centralized command. With every surgical strike, the human fleet amputated another artery. Empire logistics collapsed under the weight of its own bulk. And then came the Spectres, Black Ops units from Earth's elite Silent Guard, equipped with next-gen infiltration armor and zero-emission drop pods, began appearing in Empire-controlled cities. They didn't kill civilians. They didn't torch infrastructure. They left messages, projected on walls in burning letters, hovering in the air as red holograms, or whispered through hacked PA systems. 3 words echoed across the stars. She was 12. Commander Varkash refused to retreat. Holed up in the Imperial stronghold of Zalraxis, he dismissed the reports. Terror tactics, he told his staff. Human theater. They want us afraid. But the fear was already there. Entire Empire regiments went dark, not because they were defeated, but because they surrendered to any force carrying the Terran flag. Others defected, unwilling to risk facing the wrath that had turned a species known for diplomacy into a storm of steel. In one intercepted transmission from a captured outpost, an Empire officer was recorded whispering, "They don't just shoot. They look you in the eye first, like they're weighing your soul." In orbit above Zalraxis, Admiral Sarah Nix of the Terran Third Fleet observed the scorched moon below. She was a quiet woman, composed, cold-eyed. Her armor bore no rank, no flair. Only a single etched nameplate, Maya Torres. "Status?" she asked. Empire reinforcements delayed. Comm lines severed. Defensive grid compromised. "Ready on your mark," replied her XO. Sarah stared at the tactical display. She had once been a professor of galactic law. She had written treaties on peace, debated with aliens and embassies under banners of unity. But that was before Maya. Planetfall was surgical. Terran drop troops came down in waves of precision. EMP blasts neutralized defenses before a single bullet was fired. Combat drones deployed in perfect silence. Not a single shot hit a non-combatant. Within 6 hours, the fortress was breached. Varkash stood at the last command tower, staring down at the rising smoke, disbelief carved into every ridge of his face. "They're just humans," he hissed. "No," replied his shaken advisor, a younger officer who had once studied on Earth. "They're parents." He tried to escape, of course. Ordered shuttle. Sent out a fake surrender broadcast. Tried to flee under a diplomatic tag. It didn't matter. Sarah Nix was already waiting in the hangar. She didn't raise a weapon. She didn't shout. She simply stepped aside as 2 Silent Guard soldiers dragged Varkash out of the shuttle, stripped of rank, shaking with rage. "You think this will make you righteous?" he spat. "No," she said calmly. "This isn't about righteousness." She turned to a projection screen. A single image blinked into view. A girl, sitting in a tree, laughing with stars in her notebook. Maya Torres, age 12, civilian, dreamed of peace. Sarah stepped closer, voice like frost. "You broke the rule." The galaxy watched the trial. It wasn't held in secret. Humanity streamed it across every major network. Not as spectacle, but as lesson. Varkash was granted rights. He was allowed to speak, to justify, to defend. And then he was sentenced, not to death, but to something worse in his people's eyes. Exile, to a barren moon with no contact, no civilization, and a single AI companion that played Maya's journal entries, drawings, and dreams on repeat. Let him learn what he destroyed, Sarah said. In the aftermath, humanity did not press for conquest. No territories were taken. No resources claimed. Instead, they delivered a single revised copy of the ancient Galactic Charter. At the top, in bold red, the first rule had been rewritten. Rule number 1 of the galaxy. Do not attack our young girls. You will not survive what comes next. And across the stars, that rule was never broken again. The star named Maya. Peace returned, but it was not the same peace that existed before Maya. The galaxy, now quiet and humbled, reshaped itself under the weight of a single tragedy. A new age dawned, forged not in diplomacy or conquest, but in memory. The rule had been tested. It had withstood the fire, and from its ashes, humanity rose, not just as a species to be feared, but as one that refused to forget. Admiral Sarah Nix sat in the observation deck of the rebuilt Arden 7 colony, overlooking the blue and gold nebulae streaking across the stars. Below her, forests had begun to regrow. Cleanup crews, human and alien alike, worked together to rebuild the homes and gardens torn apart by the Empire's invasion. Schools had reopened. Laughter had returned, cautious but healing. And in the heart of the colony stood a monument. A tall silver spire wrapped in glass panels, engraved with the hand-drawn constellations of a young girl. Her notebook had been reconstructed digitally. Every page, every doodle, every star she ever named. At the base, a plaque read, "She saw peace where we saw borders. She drew stars where we saw war." Her name was Maya Torres. Every visitor, diplomat, soldier, merchant, or child, stopped there. They stood in silence, not from obligation, but reverence. Sarah remembered the moment Maya's father, Elias Torres, had returned to the colony. He walked alone, without escort, wearing the same battered armor he'd worn during the assault on Zauraxis. He didn't speak, didn't wave, just stood in front of the monument for an hour, watching the wind dance through the leaves. Then he placed the only surviving page of Maya's journal, Hope, in a transparent capsule at the spire's foot. It shimmered faintly in the sunlight, unburned, immortal now. He whispered something then. Sarah didn't hear it, but she saw his shoulders straighten as he walked away, head held high. Across the stars, change followed. The Galactic Senate ratified the Child Protection Accord, expanding Rule Number 1 into a universally enforced doctrine. Violations would now bring automatic sanctions, political, economic, and, if necessary, military. But no one dared test it again. Even the Empire, broken and leaderless, formally dissolved its military chain. The old warships were dismantled, repurposed into interstellar medical vessels and education platforms. A new government emerged, one dedicated not to domination, but atonement. On their homeworld, the former Empire citizens planted a seedling gifted by Earth. It grew into a tree native to Arden 7, its scarlet leaf a living symbol of regret and rebirth. Above it, in their new Capitol Museum, a permanent hollow display played Maya's voice, one of her school reports, where she spoke about the future of interspecies friendship. One day, she had said, we'll all sit under the same sky and just look up instead of at each other. The galaxy finally listened. But humanity never let itself forget. They established the Maya Initiative, a fleet of peacekeeping and relief vessels crewed by volunteers. Their mission: protect children in war zones, rebuild schools, and prevent tragedy before it could spark vengeance. They didn't carry weapons unless fired upon. Their hulls were painted in pale blue and gold, the colors of Maya's favorite stars. And when they arrived on devastated worlds, they never announced themselves. The people just knew the Terrans had come, not with wrath, but with purpose. On Earth, Maya's legacy went deeper. Each year, on the anniversary of Arden 7, every school in the Confederacy paused for 2 minutes. Not in mourning, but in promise. Children would write down one hope for the galaxy and place it in a capsule. Those capsules were launched into orbit, forming a glittering belt around the Earth called Maya's Ring. Her memory became more than tragedy. It became compass, creed, and covenant. Sarah Nix retired from the military 2 years later. She declined medals, declined statues, declined politics. Instead, she took a post as headmaster of the Arden 7 Peace Academy, training the next generation, not in how to fight, but how to protect what mattered. She kept Maya's original journal in her office, locked behind crystal glass. Sometimes on quiet nights, she'd read through it, not for strategy, not for closure, but to remember who they were before the fire, and why they must never forget. One evening, a young alien student, a Solani girl with mirrored eyes, asked her, "Is it true humans burn half the empire because of one little girl?" Sarah smiled softly. "No," she said. "We didn't burn the empire because she died. We burned it because she lived." And in the heavens above Arden 7, a new star had been officially named in the Galactic Registry. Maya. It wasn't the brightest, but it never faded, and now everyone knew its name.